Hey guys, Drifter here. I'm wearing my Halloween shirt, which means that it is time for this year's horror movie recommendations. For those of you that don't know, every single year I make a list of horror movies to check out. I am a big movie buff. I watch a ton of movies, and I especially love scary movies, so this is kind of my expertise. This year's list is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be doing double features, so there'll be a lot more movies, but each one of these kind of comes in a two-pack. Some of them are kind of sequels to each other, and they're also going to be much meaner and a little bit harder to watch than usual because the outside world around us is kind of an apocalypse on its own. It's kind of scary just to be out there to look at the news right now, so you need something extra scary to balance that out. I do want to warn you, a lot of the movies I'm going to talk about today are not going to make you look like a cool person if you watch them in a group setting. These are not the kind of movies that you have with family, kids, teens, that kind of stuff. They're pretty nasty with one or two exceptions that are probably like late teen appropriate. So if you're watching these, be sure to watch them with a group of understanding and consenting adults. Oh, and before we get going, if you check the description, there are direct links to the best places to watch these movies online, if that's Netflix, Amazon Prime, or wherever they're available. And let's start off with number one, which might be the meanest movie on this list just because of how realistic it is, and that's 2017's Better Watch Out. We're starting off with a Christmas-themed horror movie. You would usually do Halloween, but I discovered this one kind of randomly, and if you watch the again, spoilers, where the villain is kind of actually the main character, and he's an incel. This is a very realistic look at how a psychopathic incel thinks and how they act, and it turns out the kid set up this whole horrifying experience. He sexually assaults the girl, kills his best friend, tries to get people to kill each other. He has this whole thing intricately planned out from the beginning, and this movie is cruel, and it is mean, and it is sexually charged, and it is one of, it's like, if you could imagine if an incel became inbred and spent all his day on MGTOW on Reddit, he would kind of become the villain of this movie. And it's kind of a tough one, but it's very scary in its own right. That was part one, because this is a double feature, and it is ultimately a teen-themed movie. The second part of this double feature is another teen-themed movie, and probably the only one from this list that's going to be acceptable for a group setting, which is Jennifer's Body from 2009. Jennifer's Body might be the most mid-2000s thing I have ever seen in my life. This is kind of about the time that I was going to high school, so I got really like weird nostalgia vibes from this because it wasn't like that long ago, but you can still see it was a very different time. I think Jennifer's Body is a much smarter movie than most people give it credit for. If you look it up on IMDb, the reviews probably aren't so good. If you look up the contemporary critical reviews and box office performance, it's not very good, but I was pleasantly surprised with how good Jennifer's Body actually was. The stars of the movie, Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried, are trying really hard to give good performances. This was when Megan Fox was still trying to be a proper actress and not sort of like a model. And the basic plot of the movie is that there's a nerdy friend and a hot friend, and they've been friends since they were very little. The hot friend has something bad happen to her and is ultimately possessed by some kind of demon or succubus, or it's hinted it could even possibly be an alien or something. It's not super well explained, kind of like how a lot of zombies are, but the point is that Megan Fox is possessed and she has to eat human flesh in order to live. So Megan Fox, the hot girl, is now a man-eating demon that wreaks havoc in the school. Only her best friend, the nerdy girl, notices this, but the nerdy girl also kind of has a crush on her, and the demon makes Megan Fox more aggressive, which kind of makes it crush on her more. There's definitely some lesbian themes here. Most of the horror in Jennifer's Body is pretty mild. It revolves around killing men, some gross possession stuff, and some pretty realistic like flesh consumption. A little bit of paranoia from the nerdy girl's part, but what I thought made this movie really cool is that there's a layer of effort. There's a layer of trying, of actual deep meaning, where they're trying to explore themes of homosexuality or bisexuality, themes of rape, STDs, those kind of motives that are really noticeable in the subplots. And I feel like this movie is one, maybe two steps away from being brilliant. Like, if there had been a few plot changes, maybe a little bit of a structure reorganization here, and probably crop the ending, I think it could have been a 10 out of 10 banger of a scary movie. I do want to let you know, this is a small spoiler. There's a movie, and then an ending, and then there's like a 5-minute epilogue, and the epilogue I think is really doo-doo butter, and it kind of ruins a lot of what kind of went on in the rest of the movie, but everything up until then is great, and also lesbian stuff if you like that. The next double feature that I have to recommend to you is the Panos Cosmotos double feature of Beyond the Black Rainbow and the one you're more familiar with, Mandy. Panos Cosmotos is a art film director, you could say, or perhaps pervert or madman, depending on what you want. But he makes long, artistic, scary, and bleak movies. The first one we're going to talk about is Beyond the Black Rainbow, which was his first feature film to get any sort of credit. And the plot of this movie is in 1981, there is a girl with psychic powers being held in this really creepy government facility, and there's a doctor attending her that doesn't really want to help her as much as he does want to harvest her powers. And that's pretty much all of the plot you're going to get out of this movie. There is also a subplot of the doctor no longer being attracted to his wife and kind of wanting to get into the pants of this 13-year-old girl and getting a little serial killery about it. The majority of the movie has stark colors, extremely long shots of sometimes mundane objects, questionable focusing, really bizarre sound effects, but it's done to kind of pull you into a mood, much like a college art film. And it also is an extremely realistic representation of what a psychic hospital for gifted children would be like. Like, there's this trope in movies like, this girl has crazy psychic powers, we got to keep her locked up. This is an extremely realistic look at what that would actually be like, and it is mean and nasty and horrible, and bad things happen to good people in this movie, but it's artistic all the way through. And if you make it through that one, you can watch Panos Cosmatos' more popular film, Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. This is one that I actually saw in theaters, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's kind of like two movies, except in the trailer, you're mostly going to see one of these movies. It's like 2 hours long. The first hour is all this buildup of Nicolas Cage loving his wife. It's super well filmed, artistic again, a little bit less like college art housey and more ingestible than before. And, you know, this cult comes up and they kidnap both of them. They do bad things to Nicolas Cage. They kill his wife. Nicolas Cage has an emotional breakdown. And you don't really see much of that in the trailer. It's like an hour of horrible torture porn and really creepy stuff that's difficult to get through. And then in the back half, Nicolas Cage decides to go out for revenge and starts butchering every single person involved. And there's sort of a twist. So spoilers, again, guys, spoilers, if that's a big deal for you. They're kind of vaguely implying that there are demons in this movie that need to be summoned and will work for certain rewards or whatever. The reality is they're bikers that, I don't know, they pooled their money and they bought this giant batch of really bad LSD, the kind that sends you on the bad trip. And after Nicolas Cage kills most of them, he takes the bad LSD because he's having such a bad time. He's doing a lot of drugs in this movie. And then you see it from his LSD trip perspective, which is horrible, artistic, warped, disturbing, scary, cool, all these words all put together. And that's mostly the stuff that you see in the trailer. Is probably about the last 40 minutes of the movie is Nicolas Cage's like really violent acid trip where he kills everybody. But it's still a really fun and entertaining, scary movie. Well, maybe if you're a sick person, I think your friends might judge you for this one. Moving along to our third double feature of the day, we're going to be talking about the Logan Marshall Green double feature of scary movies. And neither of these movies were originally marketed as horror, but they absolutely are. If you're unfamiliar with Logan Marshall Green, he's one of the more underrated actors of my generation, or our generation, I would say. He's been making banger after banger and just not getting credit for it. The first movie we're going to talk about, I believe, is available on Netflix, and it's called The Invitation from 2015. I want to let you know, this is not an action movie. This is not a spooky movie with ghosts and demons and a lot of gore. This is not a movie where, honestly, a lot of like stuff happens. About 90% of this movie is just sitting around and talking. And the plot of it is, this man's ex-wife invites him to a big party in a rich mansion in Los Angeles. And they split because their child died and one person blamed the other. And the relationship didn't work out. But it's kind of like him and then all these high school friends show up and they're trying to recruit them to this cult. They're kind of not necessarily a cult. It's like a religious movement, a new way of thinking, just something kind of new agey and hokey. And this guy is damaged and he's paranoid and he's scared and he doesn't trust anything and he's analyzing everything and he's looking for a reason to say that something is wrong with this meeting, but he just can't quite find it yet. And then other things happen. The scary part of this movie is that I am a paranoid person, deeply, truly paranoid person. And seeing the actor move and act and think in this fashion reminded me a lot of myself. It reminded me a lot of when I was growing up in bad situations where I couldn't trust the adults around me. So I was hyper paranoid, double checking the windows and locks and cameras and little things like that. and he nailed that performance to a T, and it really like hit me right in the feels. And I'm not going to spoil the end of the movie for you. The next one, also starring Logan Marshall Green, is called Upgrade. Now, this is one that you've probably seen trailers of, and the trailers make it look like maybe a dark comedy or an action comedy. The plot is some gang members beat up a guy, they kill his wife, and they paralyze him, but he gets this cool, like, robot in the back of his neck that, you know, controls his body, and now he can do kung fu and go get revenge, and the robot's, like, really snarky and mean. And you watch the trailer and be like, okay, this is like a revenge movie. It's probably like a little dark comedy, like a little bleak, like maybe Guns Akimbo or something like that. But it's fun, right? Totally fun. All of that stuff, again, is maybe the last half of the movie. The first half of the movie is about a man that gets beat up and is paralyzed, and you spend about 30 minutes in his life seeing how cruel and horrible it is to be paralyzed, because he's new to this. He doesn't know how to control his chair. He doesn't know how to feed himself. He doesn't know how to clean himself. He tries to kill himself more than once. He's way over the deep end. And this is very, very realistic. It hits home. It's very scary. Again, super well acted. He fell on his face I don't know how many times for this movie. Then he gets the magic upgrade, and there's like a couple of like jokey, funny moments, but not so much. There's this really dark streak of horrible revenge and cover-ups. The good people, the police, are getting killed because he's trying to cover that up. There's a whole transhuman movement of other similar cyborgs that aren't quite as powerful going on, talking about leaving their humanity behind and what do meatbags matter and stuff like that. And then after that, there's another really super ultra dark twist that I did not see coming. And the last 20 minutes of the movie are utter madness and absolutely terrifying and not funny or action-y at all. So it's not the scary movie you expect, but I guarantee you that it's very scary. And then our final double feature of the day is going to be anime. I have an anime double feature for you of Vampire Hunter D, because there's 2 Vampire Hunter D movies. You can watch these in any order. It doesn't really matter. Vampire Hunter D doesn't really follow a linear story. It's kind of like a series of adventure novels about a vampire hunter, and they're all kind of self-contained in their things. So each one of the movies is based on a self-contained novel. The first one from 1985 is based on the first novel. It's about 75 or 80 minutes long. I don't know how it was released in the US or even rated R. The animation style is old, guys. I'm going to let you know it's old animation. It's not great, but it's extraordinarily gory. It's extraordinarily violent. It's tons of nudity and kind of like rapey bits that you would see in scary movies. Some of the voice acting is quite good. There are some, like the main characters and stuff are quite good. Some of the side characters are a little bit brutal. You can tell it's just like the intern just doing a couple of voice lines to get it through because it was made for like pennies. The movie is, I think, one of the more realistic takes of what it would be like if a vampire lived forever. The 10,000-year-old vampire that had 10,000 years to study science and invent all sorts of horrible, chaotic stuff, and Vampire Hunter D goes and fights this person. The next one is ultimately a much better movie, but there's something a little bit less raw about it. So Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust takes place about, I don't know, it's like 100 years after the first one, because the main character lives forever. And this is the story of a family of siblings that are also vampire hunters, and Vampire Hunter D has been hired along with them to find a stolen bride. This is an extremely artistic vampire movie. There's no nudity in it. There's far less violence and gore than the first one, but the animation quality is 10 times better. The fight scenes are ultimately better. This one, instead of being sort of like a gonzo Western adventure, has an overall theme about what love means and how far you'll go for love and what you'll do for love. It explores the vampires' past, their technology, their morality. There's a lot more cool monsters. Well, I take that back. There are more total monsters in the first Vampire Hunter D, but they're a lot more fleshed out in this one. You get to see them doing a lot more fun things. Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust is more of an action horror movie. Not as bleak, not as depressing, but still very, very cool. And I think it actually ended on a good note. A kind of a cute, funny, actually humorous thing near the end. But it's super good, and if you're into horror anime or vampires in general, I think you'll enjoy it. And now finally, at the end of this video, I have one bonus film for you. It's not part of a double feature. I'm not going to tell you a lot about it. It's called Martyrs, and it's from 2008. It's a French movie. If you hate yourself, and you are a bad person, and you like watching horrible things happen to people, and you want to feel really bleak and scared and depressed, you should watch Martyrs. I'm going to tell you nothing about it. Go in blind and have some fun. Guys, that is all for this year's Halloween horror movie review. I hope that some of you check out some of these double features. I hope to get feedback from you on if they're good or bad. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.